So, good evening, Puru. Thank you for your time and the opportunity given to us to have this conversation today. And
Very
we are privileged to have you today in the Gurukul series.
pleasure is mine, Ram, always interacting with you, and a very good evening to you as well. Thanks for inviting me, rather.
No, it's our pleasure entirely. I'll just take a couple of minutes to explain what you have done and what you're great at and what learnings that we can take from you. So I'll just run through the profile of you, Mr. Puru. So we call you as Puru, but for the world, you are Rajagopalan Purushothaman. You are an alumni of IMT Ghaziabad with nearly 36 years of experience in retail, telecom, manufacturing, and information industry. Specialized in LNOD primarily with business development. You're currently taking up an assignment with LNOD for Geo. Your early assignments was as Senior Vice President Geo BP, GeoMart Digital, Reliance Retail. You specialize in L&D strategic solutions, digital learning landscape, setting up corporate academy, training effectiveness, leadership and mid-manager managerial development programs, competency framework, performance enhancement, and succession plan learning solutions. You have had a very wide range of expertise in this domain of LNOD, especially Mr. Puru. And you have set up academies like Reliance Retail Academy, Geo BP Academy, and GeoMart Digital Academy. And I've personally attended your workshops on emotional intelligence, and they are just out of the world. And there are a lot of learnings for me personally, and I'm sure other learners also would have taken a lot of important takeaways from your session, which is on emotional intelligence, leadership and managerial development in more than 30 large organizations that you have catered to. You are also a visiting faculty to IIM Indore. And on top of all this, you have earned a lot of accolades and recognitions during your stint as an individual, as an LNOD expert, and as a professional. One being the most prestigious, which I can say proudly, which is an aspiration to most of us in L&D space, is a Global Brendan Hall Award in the United States. The Gold Award was assigned in your stint for the best business impacting learning interventions in 2018. You were also awarded the Asian Human Capital Award Singapore for Work Smart Learning Intervention. Established Human Capital Leadership Institute was the one who assigned this award to you. And last but not the least, you are also awarded by TISS in Leap World for the Chief Learning Officer of the Year. My heartiest congratulations to you for all these accolades that you earned.
Thank you.
And what moves me the most about you, Mr. Puru, is apart from having this wide range of expertise and accolades, you also published a book on emotional intelligence, Reaching Escape Velocity in the Digital Era. And that book is a must read. That's what I would suggest most of the people. You're currently doing your PhD on story-based animation digital assessment. And one of your passion, which moves me personally, is you're also a mountaineer. You've submitted successfully the Mount Kilimanjaro in Feb 2020, 19,300 feet above sea level. That's a great achievement, sir.
Thank you very much.
So on that note, we will begin the conversation, which is going to be exciting for both me, U2L Academy, and all the people who will ultimately hear us and watch us. So, sir, my first conversation question to you is, in this era, post-COVID and pre-COVID, as we keep comparing it, although there is no comparison, what do you think as an industry, from an LNOD perspective, we should unlearn and learn so that what worked yesterday may not work today and definitely will not work tomorrow? So what is that one or couple of things that you think that we should unlearn first?
Right. First of all, thank you for your kind words, Ram. It's always a pleasure, and thanks for that. I think this has been a question that's always been lingering in my mind, Ram. COVID was a time to introspect for all of us. So we leaned back and thought about a lot of things. I want to have this conversation to two parts: unlearning related to the business part and also the learning part. Both, if you
Sure.
allow me. I think you unlearn the way not to work with, unlearn the way to work without technology. In the sense, we were used to work without technology in the past. We need to unlearn that. In other words, need to learn to adapt to technology faster and better. We need to unlearn the old way of doing things because we are now conditioned that, okay, if a training has to happen or a business has to happen, it only has to be in the traditional, conventional way. We're not able to break our frame of reference and look differently, look at things differently. Whether it's payment module or business solutioning or scalability or use of technology, we need to start thinking in a different manner for that matter. What we need to unlearn is getting used to the slower pace of life in business in particular. What I meant is not your personal life. You need to have good health and good spirit and intact. But the business life cycles, as you know, Ram, is shortening. If you don't keep pace, you don't have a 25, 30 years of life cycle of businesses anymore. But if you
Sure.
do it at a rate, so technology might also help you to fasten up this. Let me put it this way: simple, scalable, digital is the slogan
Yeah.
other
Correct.
than complex, manual, or physical and non-scalable model. So this is the mindset we need to unlearn. Everything should be a scalable, digital, global, because technology is available to make it digital, global, and scalable. That's a mindset change that we need to bring in. That's the unlearning part, rather than going the conventional, localized, myopic way of thinking businesses. Right?
Yeah.
Uh, I'll tell you about the unlearning part in the L&D and OD professionals. The first thing is that owners, the responsibility of or owners of unlearning, relearning, and learning, if there's whatever is applicable, the onus is shifting towards individual, not the organizations.
True.
Organizations are now responsible for creating an ecosystem, making it available to you different platforms and in-house and out-house box books available. But the onus is on the individual to start learning. You know, no, gone are the time that you put people in your lap and teach them. Those who don't learn are going to be left behind in the race. As simple as that. The onus is shifting. The second interesting part, which is we need to learn to adapt. Ram. Learning is getting democratized.
Yes.
Learning was confined to the privileged few in the past in terms of formal education or learning. You need to, you 0.1% of the people who go to the premier institutions learn. But now, at the touch of a button, you got an access to the learning. It's only the willingness which might be a problem, but not the access to learning is no longer a problem. So it's not confined to the privileged few. It is available to the rich and the poor in any country, any part of the world equally. That's what I meant by learning. So
Yes. Yes.
smarter that one will be able to figure it out. You no longer can complain that I couldn't afford the education or my father was not rich. That's all gone. So that's the democratization. Other thing which I believe we need to learn to adapt is hyper-personalized learning. What I mean by hyper-personalized learning is that gone are the days that you have a huge bunch of cohorts where you have one kind of a painting the brush and doing one side of learning solutions. With technology, you must start thinking hyper-personalized. That means what is specific to an individual, we need to customize the learning in such a way, and it's possible with digital technology. That's a mindset change rather than carpet bombing. You have hyper-personalized. And one last thing that I think learning professionals, rather than pushing and delivering and creating content, that change is moving with enablers rather than creators and so gradually, we need to be the enablers to guide them what, how, and when to learn, rather than teaching them directly. That transition also is likely to happen, and we need to adapt towards this. These are the key components which come to my mind, Ram, about the changes that we need to adapt to.
No, no, well said, Mr. Pura. I think some of the points that you made, especially on the unlearning, relearning, and then learning part. And the most important thing that you said is that today the opportunities are there, everywhere. It's not like that. I remember when I was growing up, the only two streams which we were told is either science or you have to go either medical or engineering. We didn't have.
Yeah,
I mean, so therefore, whatever came in our path, we took it up. But as you rightly said, from an LNOD perspective, people have to be willing to learn because if they don't add new skills to themselves, what worked yesterday may not work today and definitely will not work tomorrow. Even technology, today I may say that we have adopted an X technology. It may not work tomorrow for sure, because we have to keep evolving, because the world is evolving, right? So very
That's right.
rightly, adding to the question which we just conversed, the subset of this question is, you mentioned something about the owners and the way organizations are being driving. Uh, you know, we formed a new word. I mean, to be honest with you, this word is not designed by me or us. I was watching one of the interviews of Mr. Deepak Parekh, who owned a prestigious organization like HDFC, and he used this word called salaried entrepreneurship. You know,
Mm.
I mean, I watched that video then, I didn't understand, but today, in the capacity that I'm working in, I got to know what he exactly meant. So if I
That's right.
related our space of HR and LNOD, I think people, instead of now starting to work towards the KRAs, that era is gone. We need to create that entrepreneurship of ownership of their particular role, their job, the responsibility that has been given to the organization. So what is your thought on that?
Oh, I'm telling you, that's the one of the biggest discussions with management is having in many organizations. So how gone are the days that the amount of effort and energy to push, monitor people to get things done, that is good enough for manual labor, not for knowledge workers. So I attach this competency of what you talk about, salaried entrepreneurship. It comes from a key competency called ownership. It is so widely used, but I wanted to allow me to decode it in some simple language so that people actually connect. It constructs of two components. They again so widely used words: responsibility and accountability. I want to derive from there and go towards how to develop that as well in organizations and how to build that ecosystem. The best description I heard from one of the interesting authors was responsibility is the ability to respond. The key
Absolutely.
word is ability. That means when situation, task, challenges comes to you, do I have the ability to respond to the situation? If time and again I respond to those difficult situations or tasks or challenges, I become responsible, right? Accountability is the ability to take account of what's going well, what's not going well in the project or the task that you're doing, and you do certain things. When things are going well, you recognize, appreciate. When things are not going well, you correct, you decide, you escalate, you talk to different people, solve the problem, decide, and you act. So when you do that, you become, I call it as the accountability statement. You can actually make a statement and realize how accountable you are on the job that you're doing.
True.
When we join this together, it comes to we form the ownership. Now, ownership, in my opinion, is because we need to encourage ownership. Many organizations want ownership, but we don't encourage it. What do you mean by that? Is imagine let's put a model together. For example, imagine I give a task. First of all, you learn to delegate tasks to people. Otherwise, how the ownership will start? The first thing is let go. Many organizations wants to keep everything centralized. They can't trust anybody other than themselves. So if you don't let go, I understand some of the complex or confidential issues, but if you don't let go and ask people and delegate, this is the first step towards development of ownership, right? During the process, you educate, you train, you coach, you get them, because there will be mistakes. And one interesting thing about ownership, if there is a mistake, it's bound to happen when you delegate and things do people do take ownership. Celebrate ownership, but correct the mistakes. If you
Yes.
penalize that person, you're not going to take ownership. It's the biggest insulation from taking ownership of people, because you start firing people that did a mistake for that matter. Then why would I take the risk next? So celebrate ownership, but correct the mistake. And that's the job as a leader. Of course, you need to recognize when something happens and they do it independently well, give the limelight to that person. Give the
Yes.
recognition to monetary, non-monetary, that depends on the organization and its perspective. And if this happens, give a more tougher project, give the next higher responsibility. So this way you cultivate ownership. It doesn't drop from heaven. It has to be cultivated in this sequential fashion. And it's just
Yes.
not you do it and you forget and then you see the project failing or succeed. You have to coach, you have to be a part of it. You have to be handhold that person in the journey. And more people you do, better would be, easier would be our job, by the way.
Yes, I mean, it's very interesting that what you mentioned, because in UTL Academy, uh, coming from the legacy where we come from, we always believe that everybody talks about their success stories. Nobody wants to talk about their failures, but in life, you actually learn from your failures, not from your success.
True,
Uh,
true.
and the point that the culture that we cultivated in an organization, which resonates with what you said, we empower people and give them delegate activities or the tasks to them, so that even if they fail, we first ask them a question: why did you fail, and what did you learn out of it, right? So these three questions, as you will understand, being in training fraternity, I've been there for almost 20 plus years, and you've been there for a decade now. In every program that we do as a trainer at any level, the three questions that we always ask after coming out of the session is: what went right, what went wrong, and what can be done better. I think
That's right.
these three questions needs to be asked with every workforce that we have once we assign the task to them, or delegate, as you rightly said the word, and allow them to fail, because they will come out stronger, that's for sure. But be there when they fail. Don't let them down.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think the two things that's a takeaway in what you said, which I like the way you framed it, is celebrate the ownership, right?
yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and that's a good thing to say. My next question, which is related to this, which is the most important one, where I have seen most of the pyramid falling. Uh, I'm actually a avid reader of Jim Collins' books, right? So the way he wrote his books, the good to great, and then built to last, and then finally he wrote How the Mighty Fall, right? So it's all interconnected. Now this question is somewhere related to that. Now, as managers or leaders, right? Is this the time, do you feel, that the industry where LNOD plays a critical role should start grooming them or coaching them, or develop a model to make them into mentors, so that they become more empathetic? I won't say sympathetic, more empathetic, and do the stuff the way you just put it across in the first two questions of ours.
Yep, yep. Hey, brilliant. I think that if you ask me, one singular biggest challenge in organization is the mentoring and the coaching and mentoring ecosystem. Everyone wants it, many talk about it, but we never institutionalize that in companies. Unless you institutionalize, just like ownership has to have an institutionalizing mechanism, we need to have a mechanism to build this coaching and the mentoring ecosystem for them. So some companies do well. What is the problem? One is that the missing ecosystem. What I mean by ecosystem is you need to have a buddy when someone joins. Formally
Yes.
start a buddy. After that, you have a formal appointment of a coach and a mentor. Mentor could be self-chosen, but the organization should facilitate that, not leave it to the choice of people, because in the pressure of the daily rigmarole of work, everything gets diluted unless we
Yes.
institutionalize, facilitate it on behalf of the company. So in our company, we're looking at creating something called gurus across the ecosystem,
Yes.
functional experts and behavioral experts. In every function, you have some very experienced people. So if I have any point of view or doubts or concern, I can actually bounce it off with that person, technically,
Yes.
functionally, and behaviorally. So we need to implant this kind of coaching ecosystem and mentoring ecosystem and institutionalize it. Otherwise, it has its own natural depth. The second part is genuinely many leaders, successful business leaders, lack the skill of coaching and mentoring. It's a
Yes.
learned skill. It's a trainable skill. We do not impart that skill adequately well. So what people assume is giving one firing in the morning, that's coaching, and giving a kiss on the cheek in the evening is mentoring. So that's not the case. The idea is you have to, it's a science. You have to have effective probing. You need to have great listening skills. Make that person think and introspect. So it's a skill needed. So you need to implant this competence in the system. It doesn't get
Yes.
grown in the wild on its own, unfortunately. And majority of the successful managers tend to lack this because they have technical expertise, functional expertise, but they don't have the people skills of coaching and mentoring. I think that's the take I have on this. And the 70-20 model, 20% comes from coaching and mentoring on the job. And if you don't institutionalize it, there's going to be not happening for that matter. This is what is
Yeah,
my
no, you have. I mean, it's a difficult thing to convey, but you have put it in the right way by blending in your own style, which I always love to listen from you. One input which I would like to add, I'm sure you would like to add on to that, is in coaching, the principle of coaching primarily starts between a manager, or let's say a coach and a coachee, is we should drive the task, focus on the task of the person, not the person, right? Many times I think it goes wrong there because the person intends to focus on the person rather than the task of the person, right? What are your thoughts on that?
very true. And then you start labeling people. It's a combination of multiple competency, lack of emotional intelligence. You can't control your emotion and start firing people, or you label people. That's one thing for sure. Secondly, very effective listening skills, ability to nurture a person needs empathy and listening, understanding of the other person's point of view very deeply, ability to ask the right questions. See, effectively, all coaching and mentoring is not lecturing, is about making the person realize, because you cannot solve a person's problem actually, because you would not know every nuances of the problem. But you facilitate for him or her to make the right choice. That needs a little of skill. That's a little of training is necessary there. So there's no harm it will do if people are trained to be effective coaches and mentors. No harm it would do. It will save a lot of
Yeah,
cost for the company in long run, I can tell you.
no, absolutely. And one of the, if you remember when we started as trainers, many years back, I mean, we still are trainers, but at the end of the day, as facilitator, we have these four eligibility criteria that we used to get certified those times. I mean, you are much more experienced and vintage than me. Uh, Everything they say that a trainer, a facilitator, or a coach should be a good listener, a good communicator, etc., etc. But one important point which nobody looks at, which was also taught to us, we further try to teach people, is creating a readiness for learning.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we have a session scheduled as a L&D professional, we always see if the readiness for learning is created, whether it's
Yeah,
the ambience or making the person comfortable, whether it's a conversation or a training program. Now that is somewhere left behind. I mean, we and communication, as you rightly said, is somewhere taken a backseat because every organization or every conversation fails because of lack of communication. So I
very.
think
You put it beautifully. I must tell you that I must confess it. Yeah, you put it very beautifully. And this readiness for learning, transfer this for readiness to be coached in an environment between the superior and the
yes,
boss in a cabin,
yes,
an office environment. So you need to create that conducive environment, that kind of a trust and relationship. So it takes a little investment. It's no quick fire in coaching and mentoring. No,
yes,
ultimately, I love that word that human beings are nothing but a bundle of emotions. If you understand it and tap it right adequately well, it's a tremendous amount of nuclear energy. I can tell you that it can
yes,
be
yes,
producing a
absolutely. And the this kind of culture, if somebody drives it, for example, the basic essence of giving feedback is making the person sitting next to you, not in front of you, right? These are all small nuances that we learned many years back.
true,
If
true,
we
true.
start this between the mid managers and senior managers with their I mean, with their reportees, I wouldn't say subordinates, it creates a very good ambience and culture for the organization, and those organizations are more healthier, happier, a bunch of people working towards a common goal, right? Uh, so that's my submission on that.
Agreed.
Not taking too much of your time, Mr. Puru. One last final question on this Gurukul series is it's an important one, so I parked it for the end. Uh,
Yeah,
the point is today the kids, if you look at the young generation, I wouldn't say kids, the young generation, the youth, which is going to be the future of this country, and
yeah.
India is privileged as a country to have young population in large numbers. What their way of thinking, their aspirations are much more different or way different than how I have been brought up in my era. Now, to channelize them, the educational institutions where they are studying, whether it's college, school, etc., are providing whatever is required as per the curriculum. But I personally see, I would like to hear from you. Is there a gap between what the industry may need or need today or future in what they are acquiring skills and coming out? Do we need to bridge that gap? And the government is doing a lot of things in skilling. We as an organization expertise in skilling. But do you think this there will be a vacuum which needs to be bridged by the professionals like us in LNOD?
Without any doubt in my mind, the answer is yes. I'm telling you, the gap in India is much wider than many of the other countries. I'll
Yes.
tell you the reason, possible reason for that. See, we are caught in a web of the ecosystem of education system, which has got the scoring, pass and fail, and certification at one end, and knowledge and skills at the other end. So the
Yes.
enormous focus is on getting better marks and scores, not education in the true sense. Genuinely, how all the celebration and you got fifth rank, 96th rank, full page ads, but what is the knowledge that they gain? Okay, one more interesting is the best thing to do, which I have not attempted. We must do a survey of the freshly educated people joining the company and work for 1 year. Ask them to do a survey. What is the application of the learning that they had in the education institution on the job? I don't think the relevance will be more than 10%. I think it's interesting to do this survey, and I can tell you, it's my gut feel that it's very, very low. Why is it so? I think the problem is there are some vested interest in the education system. The whole ecosystem runs on competition of getting better marks, but not through education. The second focus is focus on information and knowledge and not on skills. In focus on information and knowledge and recall of knowledge rather than application of knowledge. In fact, if you go to management schools, 80% of the management school, I'm not talking about all of them, a significant majority, professor or the teacher would come and teach what is written in the textbook in the form of a PPT and explain it to them. I think that's zero value in my opinion. They can read it on their own. They are educated enough. What the education lacks is, in fact, the professor should be banned from talking in the textbook. They have to make them read, come back and solve a case study, come back and solve a business problem prevailing in the industry. There's so much of information floating around which can be related to that subject. So application of knowledge is what is missing, because of which you see the vacuum, because it is purely on recall value. You read something, you write an exam, and about 20 days, you just don't remember anything of it. That's the best testimony of the ineffectiveness. That is one part. We're also focusing more effectively on functional and technical skills, very less on behavioral skills in education, for that matter, in our formal education. Do we have a
Mhm.
course of emotional intelligence? Do we have a course for listening to our children? But the moment we come to a corporation, we want them to get transformed into effective listeners and great team players. And that's what erodes many of the teams and organizations. But we have zero investment in our formal education in the system. Interestingly, Paul Singer, the author of The Startup Nation, I had the privilege of listening to him in a session. He said one of the biggest disruption which is happening, he's from Israel, and Israel is called as the startup nation. He was talking about the biggest disruption in Israel is on the education system. That he gave a beautiful example that why can't we teach children basic mathematics while climbing a hill? Make it
Yeah.
experiential. So get them out of the suffocation of the classroom to well ventilated outside world for application of knowledge. That is very, very low in our education system, and that's the reason why we are suffering. Of course, you can associate yourself with the industry, give them projects with the industry, more enclose your tech to the industry, look at application of the learning. This problem will prevail.
No, I partially agree with you because there are certain what you said is right in the current prevailing system and what has been happening, especially with COVID coming in. It has again deteriorated with online classes and all that. Children were not ready. Many of the faculties were not ready, but we had to get the show going. Having said that, there are a lot of things which I think now the government is bringing guidelines. For example, a couple of days back, we came to know that some of the industry experts can be hired as faculties, or professors. in universities and other places, so that we bridge that gap. We bring the industry experience to the universities. Curriculums also being changed. Indian's education system has been heavy on curriculum based, board based, right? So therefore, it's very few things a school or a college can do. But having said that, there is a lot of scope of improvement, and things are, I think, being worked out for India especially. But we as U2L Academy, our main focus is in Bharat as an audience. Uh, when I say Bharat, I mean to say the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities. Uh, that's where there is a lot of talent, but the opportunities are lagging. So we also would want to bring that entire workforce or the youth into the current mainstream things that happen in the industry otherwise, because you see a lot of UPSC and all these exams are cleared more or less from those markets, right? So there is a lot of brains, a lot of talent.
Yeah,
uh, so that's what I was intending to ask you, and I think you rightly paraphrased
right.
it.
Just what I fully subscribe to your point of view. The things are changing off late. I have no doubt in my mind to acknowledge that fact. So the past baggage of couple of decades has to need. We need some. The government needs some time to make the changes. There'll be a lot of resistance from different quarters. You must remember there are a lot of Western interests to resist this change because there's a coaching classes going on. The quality of your school is determined. So a lot of ecosystem is going to work against it, but the government is trying very hard. It's a wonderful beginning. The new education policy is also has opening up
Yes.
a lot of interesting points of view. I'm sure they will be moving towards the betterment. So, and the journey is long, but I think we have started it quite well. I have no doubts in my mind. I must acknowledge that part again.
Yeah, but just to what you said yesterday, one of my mentors, we were just talking over lunch, and he mentioned this phrase, which actually sits quite well between what we both are talking. If everything comes together, then the magic will happen. This is what he told me yesterday with regards to something else. But I think with the government policies, with us as industry, with the schools and the education institution, if everything comes together, the magic will happen faster. So that the point is when it will come together. Everything is happening in bits and pieces, but yes, we play a role in that.
Yeah.
So on that note, Mr. Puru, you've also been a part of a mentor board for U2L Academy, and we thank you for that. And every
Yeah.
time I meet you, whether in person or these kind of conversations, it's always a privilege. It's always a takeaway for me. Uh, so on that note, I would thank you from the bottom of our heart for U2L Academy for providing this time and the opportunity to converse. If you have anything to ask or say to me, I'll be more than happy to listen to you.
No, my thank you very much for your kind words. I know you, Ram, for many years now. I know that you as an organization has picked up this initiative of offering learning in a bonus intent, and I'm sure it will work, and that's the greatest contribution towards our country. There's no better offerings than education because it changes lives of people. You are traveling in a very noble path. It's always a privilege and an honor to be associated in what a capacity that we can do to help you in this journey around. And congratulations for choosing this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Puru. I always believe that training is a mission, not a profession. And I think we need to carry forward that together so that the magic happens faster. On that note, I would like to end this conversation of ours today, but we will keep meeting. And
Sure.
I wish you all the best. And please have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Same to you, and bye for the day.